What's going on, guys? It's me, Troi, and I'm here with FauxCast video. Look, I'm doing a little dance. Actually, you can't see me doing this little dance. So I'm making this now because I really want to get this off of my chest. And, I got a lot of backlog of videos already here, so I don't want to waste time trying to edit something, put something together, and then get to this particular. I want to get it while it's fresh off my brain, okay? But I will say this. I thank everybody who recently commented, liked, and subscribed. And thank you for those who enjoy these videos as is. I really do appreciate it because it's just easier. But Miss Morris and the Ghost is the first book in a series featuring a middle-aged woman named Miss Morris. Her name is Charlene Morris. How I discovered this book was just as usual. I was browsing the bookstores. I constantly kept seeing it. I thought it was a very interesting cover, especially with that looming full moon in the background. And then I just liked the whole subject of Miss Morris, M-R-S Morris. So that lent itself to a little bit of maturity in the character that I was looking for, as opposed to those little donut shop girls that are usually populating cozy mysteries. So I was hoping for that, which I got more or less. But then, of course, the subject of a ghost. So all this combined looked like it would be a fruit basket of fun. Cozy mystery fun. But unfortunately, the book really lacked in a lot of areas. I'm not 100% sure yet if I want to proceed into the next book of the series, but it will be released in April, and we will probably just wait till then. But let's get into what this book is about. Miss Morris and the Ghost follows this woman named Charlene Morris, who is going through the grieving process, mourning the loss of her husband, who died in a vehicular accident in Chicago. So at the opening of the book, she's out for a new lease on life. She's out for a fresh start. So she moves up to Salem, Massachusetts, where she has acquired this old mansion that she is going to convert into a bed and breakfast. Cool stuff, right? Also, I should say that she got away from Chicago because her parents were pretty overbearing. So this really is a fresh start for Charlene Morris. With the money that she has gathered from the death of her husband, she begins to do the whole meeting and greeting of several of the townsmen. That includes the painters, the carpenters, the various vintage shop owners, every person that she can bring and employ to go ahead and start either remodeling certain areas of the house, as well as to furnish the establishment, because she wants to open it up, and this is kind of her dream. Unfortunately, during the process of all of this, she ends up running across a ghost that's residing within her home, her new home. Charlene can both hear and see this ghost, and of course the ghost vice versa. But the ghost is revealed to be a man named Jack Strathmore, who resided in this exact home 3 years prior to Miss Morris actually acquiring it. Jake's death was categorized as a medical issue in which he had a stroke. The stroke led to him falling down the stairs. As a result of that, there was some trauma to the back of his head, but of course that's questionable. Nevertheless, the reality is that he's a ghost. Charlene is the only person that can see and hear him, and he knows that he is still stuck on this ram for a reason. And that reason is that he suspects that he was actually murdered. And that, of course, is what ushers in the mystery, as he more or less employs Charlene, Miss Morris, to put aside her own personal concerns to instead push his forward to solve his murder, so that he can be, you can say, quote unquote, released from the house. It's both a winning case for both of them. If she solves this murder, he's gone. If she solves this murder, she won't have to worry about a ghost irritating her house guests. So that's a decent setup, right, for a cozy mystery. You're looking for a little fun, etc., that sort of thing. I think one of the things that I learned very early on in reading this book is that it is very, very much Hallmark Halloween special, okay? And I want to go ahead and say that the number one thing that I did enjoy about this book is actually the character of Miss Morris, but only to a certain degree. Because I like the fact that she was a pretty mature character. I like the fact that she was very dogged and no nonsense in her approach towards getting what she needed to renovate and capture her dream in opening a bed and breakfast. But the authors, they emphasize too much on, her being the new woman in town who has captured the attention of all the other male characters. The painter had eyes for her. The carpenter had eyes for her. The vintage, just everybody had, the police officer, the detective who is involved in this, he's a trope figure. He had eyes for her, wanted to invite her on a date, but much more strenuously, the ghost of Jake had eyes for her. And that is something that the authors played on too much, to the point that I found it ridiculous. Like, the ghost and Charlene were flirting with one another and slowly falling in love with one another. Charlene was actually looking and checking this ghost out in his jeans. It just was like, okay, can we get some reality checks going on here? Well, I did find it a little, I would even say just a touch Mary Sue, that she's so attractive to everybody. I did enjoy the fact that Charlene was a pretty, like I said, a dogged and dedicated character to her business. So it was nice. And, through the lens of Charlene, we got to know like little intricate parts of what you would think of as it regards opening a bed and breakfast. But one of the things that I also found is that there's a lot of inconsistencies in this book. One example is, I think that for how the authors were trying to illustrate the bed and breakfast, it was so confusing. Like, Charlene had access to her particular, as the owner, she had access to her suite of the mansion. She could go either through the kitchen to get to it or through the living room. Very confusing stuff. The basement leading to the wine cellar was in the kitchen, and there was this moment where I couldn't figure out where the ghost of Jake, he had a favorite spot that he liked to sit in. I couldn't tell whether it was in the kitchen that they sat and spoke in, or in the dining room, because at one moment it was in the dining room, it was really crazy. And then there's a third floor that leads to a balcony, a widow's balcony, where a telescope once were. Honest to God, it read like the Sarah Winchester Mystery House. Okay. For a moment, I just could not keep up. It was just like, I'm trying to visualize this bed and breakfast, and it just wasn't computing. But really, that's kind of neither here nor there. So with that out of the way, there was some draws there, but let's move into the actual mystery itself, because once again, I was torn between two areas of the mystery. Okay, so the good thing about this book is that there is a lot of different paths that the authors have put together in terms of the mystery. When you look at Charlene opening up this bed and breakfast, she has to have a painter come in, she has to have a cook come in, a carpenter come in, an interior decorator. All these different characters within the community are coming into the house. That one of them most of them are connected to the house previous to her even being there, but you understand that one of them have the possibility of being the one responsible for Jake's death. See, right there's a bracket. But then, because Jake himself was residing in that home with his wife, who has now remarried one of his good friends, there is that element that Charlene has to trace back to regarding Jake's on past. So she has to look up his ex-wife, look up her particular status right now with the new man that she's with, and essentially trace back the money trail that led to some property that Jake's ex-wife actually swindled Jake himself out of. And then, if that is not enough, what the authors also do, in consideration to the fact that Jake was a doctor, they do this leering little moment in which they try to kind of suggest that maybe the person responsible for Jake's death was a relative of one of his patients that probably suffered some form of his most negative aspects of his bedside manners, to keep it vague. So with the mystery, honestly, the mystery had so much variety. It really did. I think that they did a fantastic job of providing variety within the mystery. You never really knew what avenue to go down. But even with that being said, though it is a lot of variety, a lot of avenues, the string of connection is throughout each of them. So you'll get to the conclusion and be more or less surprised. Now, the problem I have with the mystery is that it moves so slow. This is a very slow book, and I think it's probably 50 or 100 pages too long. It is a very slow book. It is going to take some patience to get through, and you're either going to like going through the journey or not. And the reason I say that is because there are chapters where Charlene is going to spend really just focusing on the bed and breakfast. She's going to be focused on making her appointments, meeting people within the town to make her appointments, having them come into the house, watching them work. It's going to be moments where it's only focused on the bed and breakfast. But then there's going to be chapters or moments or scenes that are going to be focused on Charlene reaching out and stepping out and being a gumshoe amateur sleuth, beating the pavement and pushing back the bushes to find out who murdered Jake. The only thing I can tell you is that it's very slow. It's going to be very important to determine if you're going to like the narrative flow. Throughout the entirety of the book, I did want to know what was happening. I kept reading, I kept going. A lot of the more irritating bits start to move aside, like all of the flirting with Charlene constantly, the constant presence of characters so eager to be with her, and that's Jake falling, having moon eyes for her. That stuff kind of just got in the way to me. There's also a cat that's introduced, but surprisingly the cat wasn't like one of those really big comedic elements that just takes over the book. That was not happening. Good job for that. And it was really interesting how the cat was brought into this whole situation. So, you know, if you like cats, then you'll probably find that humorous in itself. But I will say this though, I did not like the ending of this book at all. I thought the ending was, and not the murder, but the resolution between Miss Morris and Jake the Ghost. I didn't like the ending. I didn't. I thought it was just like, you're setting your readers up for failure on this. No, it's just, I think that with the next book in the series being titled Miss Morris and the Witch, let's go ahead and just focus on the witch part, on what's coming up next. I just couldn't get into the ending. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm just going to leave you guys with this. It takes patience to get through this book. It's going to go very like a glacier moving through the night. But if you can manage to find some attachment to the character of Charlene as she goes about her determination to make a flourishing bed and breakfast, then you'll be okay. And she also is a pretty reliable amateur sleuth. But if you can take that on, then you'll be okay. But just understand that this is a slow mystery to get through. Anyway, that's it. You know, when I close this out, because it's been a couple days since I read this book, when I close this out, this video, actually now kind of do want to go ahead and read the next book. So we'll see you in April. All right, anyway, thanks for listening. Bye.